Up for the booze at the beginning.
Wait, there's booze?
No, boo.
No, I thought your last name
said
was
booze.
I thought your last name was pronounced Yost. I was chanting you.
Oh, it all makes sense now. No, my last name is pronounced Yost.
Yost.
Yeah.
Toast.
Yeah. Are we good?
Oh yeah, we've been recording most of this.
Excellent. Okay, so this is going to be ANSIBLE300, getting in over our heads. If you've been following along with previous presentations, you've noticed I did the first Ansible talk, maybe a 101. Now we've jumped to 300. That was requested specifically. Someday maybe we'll get back around to 200. So this is going to be a deep dive. There's a lot of information packed into this. I completely understand if somebody kind of zones for a little while, because the kind of information that we're covering is not going to be exciting enough to keep you awake all night, but it's exciting for me because these are things that I have fought for and had to figure out, and now I get to share them with you guys so that hopefully you don't have to fight the same battles that I did.
That's all that matters.
This is my bio. Basically, I have a varied background of all kinds of technology stuff. If you're interested in any of the stuff in my background, feel free to talk to me about it. But fair warning, you're going to get pretty in-depth with that stuff too. If you need to contact me, that is my Twitter handle and my GitHub username. You'll notice that the link at the very bottom goes to this talk. Like the previous talks, and like a talk that I might give in the future, the second Ansible, you can find these at GitHub, full text, searchable. You can download them, modify them. If you're a developer and you want to add something, then you can do a pull request. I'll be more than happy to accept those. If you're not a developer and you want to add something, feel free to message me on Twitter or ask me for my email, and we can keep compiling this list of amazing Ansible hacks and interesting pieces that have made my life easier and hopefully will make it easier for you guys. Full disclosure, this talk is full of examples. I didn't make them all up. I kind of got them from the web by looking, but in the interest of saving time, now you can just get them from one spot and look at the talk on GitHub. And here we go. This is going to be a fun one. The Ansible playbook command. When we last left our hero, Ansible, we had reviewed a lot of uses for Ansible and had focused on this command. However, it wasn't really broken down, so that's what we're going to do here. Important point of note, Ansible-playbook, the actual playbook name, and then the options. This is the normal format that Ansible uses in their examples and documentation. I have had it work the other way around with the options before the playbook, but this is the standard way. So that's a little bit interesting because normally commands are the opposite. You put the options in between the command and your actual file that you're acting upon. The tags option. This is going to be fun. These are for running through a specific part of your playbook rather than the whole thing. I don't have a good example of all of the things you can do with Ansible in one playbook to be able to show you this, but playbooks can get rather huge, especially if you're dealing with multiple computers at multiple sites or different environments, home, work, virtual machines on your computer, and maybe you just want to run a part of it. You just need that one package installed, and rather than having it chew through all the stuff that it needs to do, you just want to run a piece. Maybe that piece isn't in one spot. It might be spread out throughout the playbook. You can tag your tasks and your plays with the tags attribute, and it then select those to only be run. And so maybe you've got things that rely on the web, and your current use case for Ansible doesn't have internet access. You've got some servers, blocked off from the internet with good reason, and you need to run all of the tasks that do or do not have HTTP access. For overriding tag selection, you can just say always. And this is more useful when you've combined other options together and you need to run all the tags. For selecting via kind of a meta construct, you can do tagged items, untagged items, or all items. Pretty straightforward. For including multiple tags, if you have multiple named tags, you just put them as a comma-separated list after the tags option. For excluding tags, we've got skip tags. Same idea as the tags option. You include multiple of them if you need to, and this overall will help you fine-tune exactly which pieces you want to run out of your playbook, or playbooks if you have multiple. Now we can get into the list options. Same format here. We're going to break them down one by one, going through with examples beneath them. The list options are for listing out parts of your playbook. These are most useful in debugging. So you've created this big monstrosity that you want to go and use. I would wait a second. Maybe you need to double check some of your work. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I need to double check some of my work sometimes. So we've got a whole mess of list options to start that checking. If you want to list all of the hosts that a given playbook has, you can use list hosts, surprisingly enough. If you want to list all of the available tags, maybe you want to run a tag, but you don't quite remember, did I name that HTTP? Did I name it web? Did I name it black hole? Well, you can just list all of the tags in the playbook and find out pretty easily which ones are available to you. For listing all of the tasks that will be executed, we've got list tasks. So a playbook is composed of plays. Plays are composed of tasks. And we're just kind of getting more and more granular here to break down the individual pieces so that you can analyze your playbook before you actually make a production run of it. Hopefully you do another step before that, but we'll cover that in a bit. The task options. So, playbook, plays, tasks. To start your playbook at a specific task, maybe you don't need tags to pick out specific tasks. Maybe you just know where you want to start. You've done some work, you've ran it, works perfect. You want to continue on your way. You don't have to go and redo those steps. Particularly on larger playbooks, this can be very useful, especially during development. And all you do is specify the name of the task that you want to start with. In this case, this example, task 1. I'm extremely creative. To perform a syntax check on your playbook, another really good debug option, you can use syntax check. Pretty self-explanatory. Oh, okay. Well, let me explain then. Syntax is the formatting and layout of a given item. We deal with it a lot as programmers. But for the layperson, you can just think of it as kind of a sentence structure. Do you have a capital letter at the beginning, a period? Do you need a comma? Maybe an Oxford comma. All of that can be checked on the playbook with syntax check. Gladly. To step through the tasks in your playbook, you can use step. Once again, still kind of in debugging world here. Maybe you're working on a playbook, you've got one that isn't quite going as you expect, and you want to step through to make sure that there aren't any other pieces that are interfering with it. You can use step to play through your playbook. Or maybe there's stuff that you need to do in between. You haven't added everything to your playbook yet, you're just kind of working it out, and you've got a couple of manual actions that you still need to do. You can use step to step through, and in the middle, in between steps, do something. Let's move on over to the Ansible command. Now this is just Ansible, and I realize it's a little bit small, I do apologize, but Ansible by itself, just Ansible, not Ansible-Playbook, allows you to run a specific command. You can think of it as a single task, and this is very useful if you need to do it across multiple machines. Maybe you just want to check and see if there's a specific file, or maybe you want to see the status of the firewall. You can do this very easily with the Ansible command by specifying your inventory, the module name you want to run. In this case, we're using shell, but you can use any of the Ansible modules that you want. The arguments to that module, in this case, a command, UFW status verbose. That will then run on all of the hosts in our inventory, or matching our host pattern, if we so choose, and make sure that it gets back a response. Successfully ran, failed, maybe it ran successfully but didn't produce output you were expecting. All of that is available through the Ansible command. We'll go ahead and jump over to the playbook, which is used by Ansible Playbook. And one of the things that you can do with the playbook is include tasks from another file. And we do this pretty simply. Include tasks, more tasks in this case. One of the reasons this is very helpful is because these playbooks will get bigger and bigger, and even as you segment them out with roles, you still might have a piece of functionality that you feel is isolated. And maybe it's something that you're tweaking, maybe it's something that's generated by another tool, but you can have that separate in a separate file and just pull it into the role. There's actually a lot of different benefits to this. But when you do this, it needs to just be a list of tasks. This is not another playbook that you're including. You don't need the whole structure of it with hosts and plays. It's literally just a list of tasks. It does need the document separator at the top, which that one has bitten me in the past. That's part of the structure of these files, and because of the way that it consumes the YAML files, it does need that at the top. It's very important. Otherwise, bad things happen. You can even go as far as to include variables that are passed into the tasks. So in this other file, I've got var1. That var1 changes some functionality. Maybe it's another way to limit some of the tasks that are run. Or maybe that's an IP address that I want to pass in. In fact, maybe it's not a value that I have available until I get to this include statement. I can go ahead and specify that in this include statement what the value is. In this case, var1 equals testing. And it'll go ahead and pass that into the more tasks file when I pull it in, transforming it with whatever value I've specified. Formatting, 3 ways. Cincinnati chili, never mind. This is the first way to format an action, a task. We've got a name. This is not my example, don't judge me, but it's the example I'm using. Copy Ferengi shell script into place. We're using the template module, passing in some arguments. Now, you might notice at the very end there, it's kind of cut off. That's not a mistake. That's actually how it is. I might even be able to scroll over here if I really try hard. Yep, there we go. Whole bunch more. I don't know about you guys, but formatting is really important to me. Maybe that's why I'm a developer. Did you see the hat? Just saying. So, what can we do about this? I mean, this will work for small things, right? If I've only got a couple of things to pass in, it's not a big deal, but this is a mess. Well, this is one way we can handle it. YAML is the structure of these files. That's the language that they are written in. And one of the conventions of YAML is being able to break these out into separate values. So instead of having a long line with source equals, dest equals, owner equals, group equals, and mode equals, we can actually nest those underneath. YAML is white space sensitive, so you'll notice that there is indentation between these. And this looks a lot better, at least from my perspective. But now I got to remember to switch my equal signs to colons, and knowing me, I'd probably put a couple extra spaces in there so that this all lines up evenly. And I mean, really, could be different.
Is it just like Python being tab that acts differently than like free spaces, white spacing?
It is like Python, but it's different in that YAML does not allow tabs. And I didn't want to break the bad news to you guys because I'm sure we've got some tab lovers in the crowd. But no tabs. It basically doesn't allow tabs. At all. If you put a tab in there as a value, it's fine. But as far as the actual structure and formatting goes, spaces only. And the normal convention that most people follow are 2 spaces. I'm far from normal.
That's what I did for Python is in Notepad++, you can actually change your tab to hit tab and actually puts free spaces instead.
Yeah, and a lot of other editors support that as well. Atom, Sublime Text, they all have functionality to insert what they call soft tabs, which are essentially spaces. Most of the time when we do check-ins, going into developer land a little bit here, we actually have something that converts all the tabs to spaces at the beginning of the line, just because that way we don't run into trouble later on. But yeah, that's the long and short of it, spaces only. So going on to the third way that we can format, we actually have the ability to put this little caret at the end of template there. And I know that's a little small up there, so let me go ahead and go back. Template colon, empty space. Template colon, in this case, it's a right angle bracket because I'm a developer. And we have our source dest owner group typo. And they're all delineated by equal signs, so I can just break this line up. In text editors, modern text editors, this is actually really easy. So it's very quick to go from that big long line, add a right angle bracket, add some new lines, and keep going on my way. I don't have to worry about forgetting colons, putting extra spaces. This can really be nice if you have a complicated script that you're trying to simplify. And actually, as a side note, this little trick, I'm getting ahead of myself. This little trick with the right angle bracket can be used with anything that can be segmented and you want to wrap lines with. So that's in the YAML specification. It's something that you can research more. I've found it very handy in cleaning up some of my scripts and making a little bit more sense of them. Recursive syntax checking. So this is just a little snippet that I stuck in there because I found it very useful when I've been creating playbooks. Maybe I've got a whole mess of them or they're spread out for some reason, modularized. This is a command that you can run. It's a Linux command, works just fine on the Mac. Find playbooks, that's a folder, with the name star.yaml, so any YAML files in the playbooks folder. Go ahead and only go down 1, that's the depth 1. Pass it to another program that basically breaks this up and individualizes the file, and then run the syntax check on the file. Also listing out all the tasks so that we know that processed everything okay. And there's not a lot to say about this. If anybody has any specific questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. But basically, this is just very useful. And so if you ever get in the situation where you have 30 different playbooks and you want to run a syntax check on all of them, go hunt down this document on GitHub and you can find this command. Okay, still getting in deep. Heavy shell action. It's for you. So, we're looking at another Ansible task. It's got a name, local action math. I'm very creative. It's running a local action, which is another way to say that it's going to run a command at the shell, right? In this case, the shell is going to run with all of this wrapped command. And this is what I was talking about, new lines. If you have that right angle bracket, you can just wrap it around. It'll all end up fine. It's a little bit neater than it going off the page, plus it allowed me to keep the slide small enough to show you guys. But this is an example of a very complex one-line shell command, bash command. And if any of you have ever worked with Linux before, you've probably created some messy one-liner that did exactly what you needed it to. Make sure you don't mistype it next time. Or just use Ansible, and then you don't have to worry about mistyping it. In fact, with Ansible, you could run it across any servers that you have SSH access to. So you really would be writing it one time rather than having to copy-paste or copy over a file or whatever other method that you need to do. So this big, long shell command that actually takes in a range and does some stuff with IP addresses and even loops with sequence, so it's even looping and running this command multiple times, is all encapsulated in this nice little task that then you can run across any piece of your infrastructure. Any machines, all machines. Again, one of the reasons I really, really love Ansible. We also have an important point to note down here, register result. Register result means the result from this command is going to be saved as a value. Right? So I was talking about running this command across a bunch of machines, say 300. We would want that value to be unique across them, and we would probably want to use it later on in the script for something, maybe to check and make sure something happened we expected or didn't expect, maybe to combine with another value. Maybe we want to create an inventory across our entire list of hosts. Well, we could do that, have it register the result, and then iterate over the result with, as I mentioned in previous talks, standard out lines. So I can run a shell command across my entire infrastructure, get a result, save result, and then use it further down in the script. React to that information. Makes Ansible very powerful. And all without an agent that needs to be installed on the box. This is all just running from the server, if you will, and you need to have SSH access. Lining them up and knocking them down. It's kind of punny. So we've got line in file. This is another favorite of mine working with Ansible. I saw you laugh. We are going to set some PHP FPM parameters. Anybody excited about that? All it really means is we're going to edit a text file. And if you have any Linux experience, text files are everything. Any configuration that you deal with, stored in a text file. It might be a pairing of names and values. It might be INI format, might be YAML, who knows? But it's always a text file, right? Well, if they're following the pseudo standard. So I've got a couple of keys I want to change. Actually, I don't just want to change one value. I want to change multiple things. I want to change the value of error log. I want to change the value of log level. I want to change the emergency restart threshold. That sounds important. Could be. In order to do this the most concise way possible, I can wrap it up to look like this. I could write these individually and just duplicate it, but one of the major tenets for us developers is to not duplicate things, because when you duplicate something, you'll either fix the first one and forget about the second, or you'll break the second and forget about the first, fix the first, and wonder why it's still not working. So let's keep this all in one. We've got 3 parameters we're using with items. That means that this is going to run over this list of items. That little dash indicates a list in YAML. We've got line and file is the module that we're using. We've got the destination, which is just the file location, in this case, etc php-fpm config. We've got insert after and a regular expression. And basically, we're going to dynamically compile these regular expressions. We're going to use them to find these values in the file, error log, log level, emergency restart threshold, and we're going to replace them if they need replaced, all with one step. So actually, I could encapsulate my whole file with this. Taking it a step further, because I could pass these values in from anywhere, I could save my configuration file alterations out just as these pairings. The parameter, the value. Parameter, the value. You could save that out to a file, pull it in when this runs, and that means that I don't have to have a whole copy of the configuration file I want to replace. Just have the changes I want to make, easier to maintain, and if I want to add anything, it's just going to add to the end of the list. Keep running. I think that's all the pieces of this. I know this was a pretty in-depth one. Everybody still okay? No questions? Question?
Okay, you were talking about tag option.
Mm-hmm.
If you wanted to, say, run 2 tag options,
Mm-hmm.
would it be tag, options for tags, tag, or would it be tag, space, second tag?
I'm not following. Do you know what piece that lines up with?
Yeah, so if you're writing out your command, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tag.
Mm-hmm.
Are you then putting another, if you want to call a second tag?
No, it's just a comma-separated list in double quotes. And that way you don't have to specify those over and over again, which is also interesting and a little bit different than other programs have done, where you can specify it multiple times. Gotcha. Feel free to jump in with questions at any point during this. Don't worry about holding them. Now let's address another topic. We've talked about the commands. We've talked about playbooks, tasks. Now we're going to talk about your inventory. Your inventory is just your list of hosts. Pretty straightforward. Covered that a little bit in the first talk. But maybe you don't have a static list of hosts, right? Maybe your host list is changing from time to time. Maybe your hosts aren't even local. They might be from cloud providers, or they might be virtualized, or you might just want to have a little bit easier life and not have to change the file every time that you update one of them. In that case, dynamic inventory is your friend. Dynamic inventory allows you to pass a script into Ansible's commands, Ansible and Ansible-Playbook, which it uses to obtain a JSON blob with the inventory. So we'll break this down a little bit because that's a lot of jargon in there. JSON is just a programmer thing. It's how we format things. It's kind of like YAML, except for a lot more curly braces. Somebody really liked to see. I don't know. And a blob just means a chunk of it. Script, well, that could be a bash script. Could be a Python script. Actually, it could be really anything that outputs that JSON blob. It could even be theoretically a web call. Just saying. And all that really matters is it passes back the JSON blob. There's a couple different ways to do this. We'll get into that in a moment. But if you're in luck and you use one of these, That's already provided as part of Ansible. So if you use Amazon EC2, it's a popular choice. There's a script that will go and look at your entire Amazon EC2 inventory and let you run Ansible on it. So you don't have to worry about, did I spin up a new machine, did I spin up an old one, or even more to the point, did something load balance and spin up new machines that I don't even know about because we've got some magic clustering solution. Either way, Amazon EC2, when you run Ansible, it'll get that list dutifully, bring it back to you. Same goes for Linode, if you guys like Linode. DigitalOcean, who's into drops? Nobody. Got it. However, those are all options. Those are all dynamic inventory scripts that are provided. Now, there are some that aren't on here. People have kind of made them on the side so you can go searching, but these are the ones that are actually provided. And at the end there, you'll notice it's squished a little bit. This is actually Nova and Vagrant, so two separate ones. Yes?
Are they addressing
Are they addressing doctors? Oh, Docker. Because Docker is not a machine manager, it's individual containers, that doesn't feed into this. You can run Ansible scripts that either set up or manipulate containers, if you so desire, but they're not going to be part of your inventory because they're not individual hosts, they're containers within the hosts. Does that answer your question? Excellent. So, in spite of all of that, say that you're a Microsoft shop, got Active Directory, got a whole list of your machines in there. Why not pull it from that? Well, if you've got developers on staff or you just decide you want to do it yourself, and it can be done in PowerShell, I'm not going to show you how, you need to make, maybe next time, you need to make it output a list like this. Fairly straightforward. This is that JSON stuff. It's got curly brackets because curly brackets. It's got our web servers. That's the group name, web servers. Host 2 example, host 3 example, just a list of them, nothing fancy. We've got another set here, databases, right? Another group. We've got the hosts in that group. In this case, we didn't just want to specify the host, but we had other information, trivial information in this example, but maybe you have configuration that's specific to databases. Could be. If that's the case, then you can set that value. This is all coming from a script, from a remote location. So you can make it as dynamic as you possibly want to. Like I said, Active Directory. Pull all of your machines out of Active Directory, set up the groups from Active Directory. Maybe you've got some variables stored in there, possibly in a description field. Really hope they aren't sensitive, but they could be there. And it'll pull that all out and make this nice JSON format, and you have yourself a dynamic inventory. It's actually more straightforward than it sounds. And since it's JSON, a lot of things have the ability to consume or output JSON, like PowerShell. Bash, not so much, but Python for sure. And Bash, there's some little tools that you can run and chain things to. Gets interesting. Let's move on over to modules. No worries, we're almost done.
You don't store passwords in description fields?
I don't store passwords in description fields.
You can do it. They're laughing.
I don't. Can't speak for anyone else. Right? It says it right on the little tag if you change the... Anyways. So, modules. We're going to actually skim over these. Got to admit, there's a gap in this presentation. There are so many modules, I couldn't pick my favorites. It's my personal failing. I couldn't pick my favorites. Did I misspell something?
No, I was using there.
Okay, Captain Literal. Okay, first one, we're going to go over the debug module. Kind of a theme of this talk, ways that you can debug your stuff, right? Well, the debug module just prints a value, basically. When you run your playbook, if you want to kind of check on how things are doing, or you need to see if a variable has the value you think, like inventory host name, debug. Short, sweet, straightforward. Accelerate. This is a fun one. Has to be carefully considered. Accelerate actually runs a process on the client side that speeds up the connection. This has benefits, but it does mean that something needs to be installed, possibly installed by Ansible, since you can bootstrap yourself into it. And Accelerate will make things go faster. Shock, I know. In this case, it makes the communication between the server and the client go much faster. SSH connections are wonderful for secure, for being secure, for taking the time to make yourself secure, for actually taking a lot of time. SSH sessions, I know this will shock you, but can take seconds to spin up, even if there's no latency in the connection, which is a good thing. We want to be secure. But it can have the drawback that when you're running an Ansible playbook and you're doing it across many different hosts, and every time that it needs to run a new piece, it spins up a new SSH connection, it drags things down. Things get slow. And if you're into the hundreds, tens of hundreds, tens of thousands of hosts, it can take a really long time. So the answer is to use the acceleration module. Now, the acceleration module isn't used as part of a task. The acceleration module is just added to a play that you want to accelerate. And actually, I really appreciate that. That means that I can turn this on and off with a variable, or I can just turn it on and off manually. And the communication between the server and client are still encrypted. It's just not quite as robust as a full SSH session, and it does use that initial SSH session to bootstrap itself into this. So you're still just as secure, but you're a little bit faster.
Can you go into a little more how that actually works? So you SSH in, it installs a quote-unquote agent.
Well, that
agent maybe that gets uninstalled at the end.
That could be. Most likely what actually is going to happen is you will write yourself the install and uninstall process, which gives you more power, right, but also more responsibility. In my opinion, that's a good thing. I want that responsibility. I want to know what I've installed and what I haven't installed. I don't want it doing any funny business that I didn't tell it to, especially when its whole point is configuration and change management. So it installs a little daemon that either gets started or stopped, right? Through the Accelerate module, you can actually write all that yourself. So install that service, start it up. If you want to just stop it when you're done, it'll go to sleep, it won't wake up, and your next Ansible session, you can tell it to accelerate, and it'll wake it back up. But if you don't, then it just lays there dormant. So, I mean, that's a trade-off, right? Another thing to install, you're more vulnerable because you have one more binary, but at the same time, you could actually install and uninstall that every single time you run this. Particularly helpful, like I said, if you're doing large batches, and so maybe you maybe you have that turned off by default, but then when you want to run this large batch, you can turn a variable on, have it go through those extra steps to install it, utilize it during the session, and then remove it. Okay, next module, the fail module. I feel like I should have gotten a meme picture for this. Anyways, the fail module fails out of a running playbook, right? Maybe you've encountered a situation where you just want to stop, right? Ansible is idempotent, so or idempotent, depending on who you ask, so it will not make changes you tell it not to. It will make changes you tell it to, and it'll report all of that to you. But there are situations where you just want to stop. Something's gone horribly wrong, files aren't there, configuration settings aren't there, something terrible happened. You can do that pretty simply with fail. And it's actually the most useful when you combine it with a condition. You don't want it to just fail in the middle of it. You probably want to check something. So when CMDB status is not equal to be staged, fail out of it. It's not ready. It's not ready for this task. The pause module. Pretty straightforward. It pauses. Any questions? Okay, great. Okay, so the pause module. We've got minutes, we've got seconds, we've got a prompt. And this allows you to kind of go halfway in between the step option and actually having it stop, right? We're just going to pause. Maybe for a little bit of time, maybe for you to type some input, maybe for you to do something manual, whatever it might be. Last thing, kinda. Just a little Easter egg. If you have COWSAY installed, it will run it every time. If you don't know what COWSAY is, install it on a machine that you trust. You can turn this off, though. You just export the shell variable Ansible no cows. If you know how to do this from your bash RC file or your bash profile, you can stick that in there. It's just a side note. Might or might not have had cows talking to me for a while before I found this. Makes you happy, makes you smile. Cows, they give you milk. Last thing that I need from you guys before I go. I know you've enjoyed this. I know you enjoyed the previous one. If you didn't, I'm just going to ignore you. However, I'm going to do another one. I'm probably going to keep doing these until somebody pays me to keep doing them or stop doing them. Any takers? Okay, so my next talk. I would like to know what the people here would like to hear a talk on. And these are probably all going to be 101 type talks. I'm not going to do another in-depth one for at least a little while, give you guys a break. But out of these options, we'll do it by a show of hands. And you can vote multiple times if you really want to be that guy or gal. Python 101. Who would like to see a Python 101 talk? Okay. Elk, Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana. Okay. Developer tools. I'm a developer. I have lots of tools. Okay. Fair enough. Anybody else have any other suggestions? Yeah. Other. Any other ideas? No? Okay, well, it looks like the next one will be Python then. I have no idea when I'll be seeing you guys again. Mr. Herman Willing, I will get in contact when I have it written, and if you have any other questions, feel free to ask me after the talk. Contact me on Twitter, or go take a look at the GitHub, even if you're not a developer. It's just, there's a resource. Don't have to do any scary developer stuff. And I did credit all the locations that I got this crazy stuff from. Again, GitHub's the best place to get it. Any last questions? Thank you so much for your time. I hope you learned a little bit, or at least just didn't fall asleep.
There is no stage. There is no spoon. All right.